No, go ahead and dive in.
Okay, a good, that question that you asked, here, I have to find my glasses.
So I do have a question,
Okay,
actually.
yeah.
So then that discovering, the next time they go into there and they do some discovering, and they explore, like today when we had that celebration afterwards, like what were we, because they celebrated like that they illustrated and stuff, but what else would you do for that? Just to have that shared time.
First of all, what you want them to know is that by studying illustrations, they can learn how to draw, and that's one of the things that's a challenge for them.
Yep.
So going to this table, and you can see, so I would do a mini lesson from that, maybe one or two, demonstrating how those books are helping us. And I would have some of the kids that are more articulate about how they help them get up there and teach. Okay, so the kids don't know, a lot of kids didn't know when they opened the book that there's a step-by-step process. Okay, so that would have to be taught. Some kids, and they don't have to follow the step-by-step process. I would suggest that they could try it, because that's why the author created this book, and that's why they helped us. But sometimes just looking at the pictures more carefully can help you figure out how you want to draw it, which is actually what Max did. He didn't follow the step-by-step process, and he was still successful. So I wouldn't want to be rigid to say you have to follow this,
Right.
But this is how this book works. Okay.
Different ways. Okay.
And then you always want to talk about, how did this help you? This is a you're having them explore because it's a strategy to get them over a hard part. I mean, this is what all illustrators do. They study pictures. I mean, every illustrator I've ever heard say they must have drawn like a whale 1,000 times before they finally got in the book they want. So the idea, but then I would also connect it to the conversations, whoever that little girl was, about not giving up. So part of it is, okay, if you're not happy with it the first time, you just keep, and that's called perseverance. So I would lay in that wow word, vocabulary word, that's called, do you want to know the big people, what moms and dads say when they say don't give up? That's really being persevering. You have perseverance. And I would use that. Boy, you had a lot of perseverance today. Remember, boys and girls, that means you didn't give up. Build that vocabulary. Having a little kid by the end of kindergarten say, I'm persevering, or that's perseverance, would knock anybody's socks off. And they can learn that. You had asked, okay, so the transitions, I would use something the same when you want, like at the end of writing, when they're writing. The purpose of a transition song is it's a signal for me to, okay, eventually they're going to know how long this is about-ish, so I can start finishing up, so I don't have to stop abruptly. I can stop just finishing up a little bit. Then I'm going to put my things away. I'm going to come to the carpet. Now, what you might want to do is, if they have something from their writing that they want to share, they bring the writing to the circle, and they put the writing behind them. So that they're not fidgeting with it. That's just a technique, Otherwise, and then you have, by going around, are going to have a couple of kids that you really want to share what they've done. But then you can open it up to somebody else have something that you tried that was new, or did somebody use a strategy from blah blah blah, whatever. Did anybody use movement lines, and why did you use them? Now that conversation in the beginning with movement lines, what do illustrators? Oh, that was the question that you had. That was.
So, Katie, let's talk a little bit about how we talked about that lesson, and one of the reasons why we chose to go that route with the illustrations was when the kids are out writing, they're drawing characters, but their characters don't have faces.
But wait a minute, let's just back up.
Okay.
Because your question, which was a wonderful question, now think about this. It was wonderful. You said, what you're going to notice is something the illustrator does to help us understand the story better, because that's what illustrations are all about. That was a big open-ended question. Then you showed the Piggy and Gerald, and you said, what are you noticing? Which was great. So then the kids started noticing. but you had an agenda.
I know.
That's what we were,
That's
yeah, that's what I was getting
That
at, yeah.
responsive, yeah.
Right,
Yep.
right. So that's okay. So it's not that you can't
with what
have an
they're doing.
agenda. You can, but okay, so now movement lines of my glory. Okay, so she's up there noticing all these movement lines.
Yes.
And she might have learned that from 4K if you didn't teach it. This might be something coming from the core field, because I don't know how any little kindergartner would come up with that on her own. But, so that's wonderful. You're building on what they did in 4K. And then you study them to see how the lines are different, what it does. So you saw me do
Right,
that.
yes, yeah.
And then what you can say, you can ask, did anybody else notice anything else? And if they don't, you could say, well, here's what I noticed.
Okay.
I noticed that, I could tell that he was afraid because look at his face. So see what the illustrator did on these 2 pages? But by having that conversation, the kids, some of the kids really started thinking, because when I went up there and I was showing how all this was happening, oh wow, that one little boy said, well, let's see the next page. That's awesome. Because his line of thinking, he was thinking story.
Yeah.
He was thinking not just this page and movement lines, but let's see what happens next, which was perfect because
That yeah.
we do not want them to go back and add movement lines just to add movement lines.
Because they will, yeah.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. They were
that
going to.
was-
That's why I jumped in.
That was
And then
perfect,
he
yeah.
went back and they don't have any movement lines. They stopped. You wouldn't have movement lines. Everything stopped. But then the other little girl was thinking along the lines of the story about why they stopped, what's happening, and what the elephant was doing in the face and the piggy. So do you see how they were really analyzing the story at a much different level than my goal is for them to use expressions on their faces,
Right,
which is a very different thing from going back to your big question.
right,
And then how does it help us understand the story? That's what they were doing.
right,
That was helping them understand the story as opposed to just putting something in the picture.
right.
So what are some good things to say after that when they're off to writing that doesn't lead teachers to make kids go and think they have to do it without intention?
So let's think about that. What
Yeah.
could we say? What could you leave them with?
While they're writing,
Okay, I would go back to your question.
Yes.
And I would
What did
say, I'd say, you know what, boys and girls, what we just did just now, we really noticed a lot of things that illustrators do to help us understand the story better. I would reiterate a couple of things and say, you might want to try something that works for your piece. Because the idea isn't that the way that, for example, Hawkins does it, we have a mini lesson, so I expect you to kind of go back and try it.
Right.
Well, you know what? That's not how this works.
yeah, right.
Because I might go
not
back and
everybody
try it,
does.
but it's, I want them from the get-go to think about intentionally over time, doing this at 4K and 5K, talking about writers and illustrators do things with intentions. And when is the best time to do it, and what is the result on the reader or the writer, kind of thing,
There's a purpose
It's
for
a
everything,
purpose
yeah.
for everything.
Do you, when during that share time then, would that be a question that you could ask too? Like, you always have in mind the kids that you want to share, but would that be something, did anyone
Yes.
try
Yes.
some of the moves
Yeah.
that the author,
And then have them
that the author
explain
did?
exactly,
today.
absolutely. And then
Okay.
you walk around noticing, have them come back and then say why. No,
Yes.
what does it do? And have them put it under the dock camera. What does it do for Max's story when he did this? And what does it do for you as a reader? And I made a mistake when we were sharing Max's. I knew it as soon as it came out of my mouth. When Max was sharing his dinosaur, I said, wasn't this a great butt? And a couple kids said, no. That I should have just said, wow, Max did such a great thing, and I should have known that there could be a kid or two that would say that, and I didn't want that kind of feedback for him.
So on that same line, when she was reading the book, the little boy kept saying, when is this book going to be done? And we didn't do anything about it. Is that how you handle that?
Yeah.
Just let it
You
go?
just-
Yeah,
no,
because
that's
he
what I
got
thought.
really engaged.
He did. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of times we shift to that and go, it'll be done in a minute, or
No,
we
no,
say
no, just
something.
keep
You
going.
handled that so
yeah, that
well,
was
Katie.
wonderful. And also the little boy in the green shirt, the blonde hair and sitting in the middle, he wasn't very engaged in the beginning, but all of a sudden, and that's what it is. It's not, they're not going to be totally all riveted 100% of the time. But after you kept going, you know what that book did? Each one of them could identify with something in that book. We all, and they were like, it's kind, you know what that book did? I wrote down, it normalizes problems and what to do about it. That was the big thing that in the kid's mind, that's the big thing that you were doing. And then the big thing that came of it is that I would want to record from that book on an anchor chart is you can get help from a friend, you can get help from others, and you can be the help. Those two things are the kinds of and you wouldn't have gotten that without having them have a conversation.
Right.
So when that one kid said, so who was the boy in the end that said you could be the help? I forgot his name. Ezra.
I should have had
He
to
was
teach that,
really
I'm sorry.
listening to the conversation, because in order for him to say, well, you can be the help, he had to listen to what they were saying about you can get help, but then he took the next step and said, you can be the help. That's the beginnings of that kind of conversation.
And from a 5-year-old.
Right.
From a 5-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
You can be the help. I mean, you will get these amazing kernels of powerful things. I mean, this is huge. Now remember, that becomes Ezra's comment, and you put that in the anchor chair. Remember when Ezra says you can be the help. So when things are not going so well, and you say, do you remember what Ezra taught us from Todd Parr's book? You can be the help. Is there a way right now you can be the help? So you want them to live the messages that they're getting from these books. So you're going to go back to that. Tomorrow I would dig up, your library has that Peter Reynolds book, Ish.
Okay.
Because it's about, not all approximations, they're not, I mean, I don't think we need to frame everything as a mistake, but as sometimes we just try something and it's not exactly the way you want it, but it's not necessarily a mistake. It's like, I'm ish. It's kind of ish, I'm nearly there. I'm almost right. As opposed to it's a mistake. Some things are a mistake. You spill your milk. That's a mistake. But approximating drawing, we just get better and better. Probably need to go, huh?
Yeah. We probably.
Okay. So that nugget you would pull out like tomorrow, like on Monday or whatever from that book would be, we learned there's different ways to help, or what we learned from that, like you can get help from so and so. Would you ask them for a situation that they got help from? Like did you?
Here's what I would do. I would
introduce.
introduce the anchor chart. I would put up the picture of the book, Todd Parr's name, and then I would put, what did we learn? What did we learn? And I would put Ezra's name, and then if you don't know who said you can get help from others, just put you can get. We know as a class we figured out you can get help from others, and you can be the help. And I would put Ezra's name there, and and then I would say something like, and then you could say, we learned some other things. Ella said we can clean up after ourselves. Don't give up would be another good one. We don't give up. That's called perseverance. So you might say today, let's see if we can use some of Todd Parr's ideas that he wrote that book to help us. So today, let's just think about how we might help a friend, or how we could be, or when you need help, and that's okay. And when you can be the help, and then maybe before lunch, you can just say, hey, you know what? Did anybody help someone else? Were any of you the help today? Did anybody need help? Well, good for you. And who was the person that helped you? So you were the help. Did anyone not give up? Wow, let's celebrate that. Do you notice the celebration?
Yes.
Celebrate when they're doing these things. This is how you build this kind and caring classroom, kids that are going to be different in the world. They're going to take that home with them too.
Right. Right.
And then I would do ish because of approximations. And you might want to pick another book now that talks about how we can help each other. I mean, there's lots of different kinds of books. The Sick Day for Amos McGee.
Yes, I had that one at home. I wanted to do that one today.
Yeah, well, do it tomorrow.
Okay.
And then build on this. See, the idea is to build on these ideas, not to lose it.
Okay.
Not to have a parachute drop. We had this great conversation. Well, Okay, that's great that you have this
They
conversation.
forget it, yeah.
But
If
what
you
you
don't
want are what
bring
are
it
the lessons learned that can change us, because this is the social emotional piece,
Mhm.
right within your literacy.
Okay.